Hello again. I'm going to read another story from On Beauty. This is how it happens. It begins with a quote from Lorraine Niedecker. In every part of every living thing is stuff that once was rock. 1. In the opening of Charles Franz Landry's great Canadian novel Precipice, he describes the unnamed mountain as a finger. The novel opens, voiceover, to a filmic panorama, the blue-eyed British Columbia peaks, winking snow-capped scrape a tear, and every tear a teardrop shaped in cloud. She knows the book so well she has memorized the pages. She has started to read between them. 2. In her final year of high school, Juliet adapted a fraction of a short story she loved into a 3-minute monologue. Ezra Pound, confined in his cage near the end of the Second World War, animal frenzied in an American internment camp just north of Pisa, Italy. Timothy Finley's Daybreak at Pisa, learning by tone and by heart, and the way she stood on the stage, feet slightly apart, braced for a blow. She held and hunched, pulled up the collar on her thrift store overcoat to become him. Beneath her breath, she cursed. She hunched, hunkered, lumbered. She lunged across the stage, shallow breath to quicken anxiety. In her best caged animal tone, she let fly the opening line as accusation, stretching skyward. Where are the birds? 3. She read through the novel again. She sketched out her notes, which began to form their own shapes. She had a passion for fiction, but anything too lengthy bored her, and anything too short unsettled. Everything about this unsettled. As Pound himself wrote, beauty is difficult. At night she dreamed of 1940s era film stars. She wished her surname Lake, like Veronica. Have you been to the shores of Veronica Lake? She imagined Veronica Lake Arms resting on a charming hill overlooking the beach. In daydreams she stands barefoot in the sand of Veronica Lake Beach, staring straight out into the depth and breadth of the water. Sun transforms the surface to silver. 4. In the fire, charcoal replaces wood, wood from peat. On the barbecue, she turns the venison with tongs. In her small cottage, electric heat replaces fire. In the distance, the hum of a chainsaw. The hum becomes purr. Her dissertation accepted, defended, fades into history. She writes freely, deep lines of prose, impossible depths. If she were to suddenly rise air bubbles quick in her veins, she might burst. 5. Her dissertation, The Scrapbooks of Catherine Parr Upper Canada during the Victorian era, sister to Susanna Moody, roughing it long in her Lakefield wild. 2 Strickland sisters from London who both married to backwoods and emerged pioneers. Trail, who composed scrapbooks as personal gifts for family and friends. Of dried wildflowers, maple leaves and clippings from Stony Lake, gathered, mounted, and annotated. Scrapbooks built for a nephew, a neighbor, a grandson. Companion grasses, collected. Trail, who studied and sketched out her breadcrumbs, dark communiques sent from a bottomless wilderness. Juliet saw echoes in the ritual from other British constructions, from Victorian gardens to the Museum of Curiosities. A controlled, a tamed wilderness, a domestic bliss from the formerly savage, a collection of lions and pens, fangs filed or pulled. 6. It was the only book he wrote. Charles Franz Landry, late Victorian and early Edwardian lawyer, banished to the colonies as penance for some unrecorded, unheralded crime. Some thought a possible murder, others suspected a dalliance with a married socialite. They weren't even his colonies, but he was sent nonetheless. He attempted to practice in these lands his grandfather might have known as Lower Canada for 15 years before disappearing into the hills. Letters home recorded his erosion. Quebec City is not Lyon, and I could not be further from the truth. This city is a live civilization in the unforgiving wilderness. Toronto suffered far worse, an ugly mud pit that could only be redeemed through cleansing fire. Ottawa, the capital, was not mentioned. 7. Juliet. All she knew was the book, all that she knows. She placed her hands on the manuscript, long fingers, white and bone-thin, her grandmother's hands. What else they share, the red ruby keepsake on left ring finger. Something her father once said about his mother's fingers, they were always so quick to grab at his arm, to wrap themselves like ribbons around the leather strap. Unspooled, it remained a confusing image. She considered brightly colored ribbon wrapped tight around dark leather. In Sanskrit, Anamika, the name of the left hand's fourth finger, which translates to nameless. Sanskrit itself, a word that means refined, adorned, well constructed, or completely formed. She no longer recalled her grandmother's name. 8. Precipice, whether something to leap from or into. It was in these dark woods where Laundrie's novel was birthed, emerged, and remained. A manuscript in Juliet's hands slipped into a metal box and forgotten. It is hers, alone. Some right to discover, some right to find themselves, another's to disappear. Laundrie, unmarried. The missives sent over God's endless ocean to his dwindling family, registering his list of complaints and contusions, his near endless wounds. He was a man banished, in exile, eroded to the point of erasure. There was nothing to find. All that remained in the pages of a single manuscript tucked into a crevice of a dusty cabin. After an unknown scope of years had passed, the cabin had been presumed abandoned and sold, disappeared. Juliet's father and grandfather. Juliet, her small hands reaching into the darkness to where the body lay in the spaces of these pages. 9. The remains of stone hearth in the bush was a mystery, one she felt no urgency to solve. To solve every riddle would be to reduce the magic of the world. On sunny days, she would sometimes wander there to sit quiet and think, and occasionally catch a curled clip of the red-winged blackbird. There were birds she knew the names of, some she didn't yet. The sparrow, starling, cardinal. A mathematics of small birds scattered across the acreage. She rolls out a litany of facts and names, her personal rosary. I am Elliot Gould in Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye, Juliet said, to no one. I'm Philip Marlowe. All at once, she had no destination. Her grandfather and her father, the clenched fist and the open palm. It was the only book he wrote. Somewhere toward the end, someone says, all books are exactly the same. He had to write only one.